Hey, welcome back to Sports Report Weekly. We're covering the Final Four and championship game preview right now. It's myself and Bryce,
Hi
as
guys.
usual. Yep. And so we'll just go ahead and start off with, Florida, Connecticut. They're an interesting matchup. 1 versus 7 seed. Connecticut really, in my opinion, sort of just like flying out of nowhere from just all season long. I mean, they beat Florida early on, but then up and down, all of a sudden they hit the tournament.
30 games ago.
Yeah,
30 games ago.
yeah. So I don't think it holds much weight when we're talking about things right now, but it's very interesting, the matchup with Napier and UConn just lights out, sort of doing his Kemba Walker thing, which we've talked about before. and then
Yes, flashbacks of Kemba.
Yeah, and then Florida, Billy Donovan with a team that's, the last time he had this number 1 seed going to the, Final Four championship game, he wins. But he also had 3 top 10 NBA draft picks at that point in time. This year's team, it's all sort of guys that maybe go in the second round or don't get drafted. So it's a different feel. That being said, they're tearing things up. So,
I was going to say, yeah. In this season, and we've seen with Kentucky being the lone exception, we've seen this tournament a lot of teams that even if they weren't maybe expected to be where they are, have a bit more and a little bit more know-how. A lot of teams
Mhm.
with seniors. I mean, you look at the Wisconsin Badgers, be it a bad call that they're in. They've
Yeah.
had a lot of leadership with some players that have been around the block. You look at again UConn; they do have a little bit of a mix of some younger guys and again guys that have been there, senior players, senior leadership. Um,
Yeah, they're an
Interesting fact
interesting
for Michigan
team.
State. I had them originally picked to get into the Final Four and go to the national title game. Did I with Michigan State? However, and I will like to claim credit for this. Last week when we did our Sweet 16 review slash preview, I said Michigan State was my original pick, but because they're playing in Madison Square Garden, home of the old Big East, do not be surprised to watch UConn get into the Final Four. And sure enough,
Yeah, yeah. It was pretty.
the Huskies are there, taking on Florida. And as you mentioned, the last time these two teams played each other, I believe it was back in December of 2013. But that loss and that Shabazz Napier mid-range jumper at the buzzer for the Huskies to win is what sparked a now 30-game winning streak for the Florida Gators. So
Yeah, and that's the thing. For me in this game, I see Billy Donovan he's obviously a great coach, and he's got a team that just works really well together. They're lights out. So I see Florida winning. I think it'll be close. I think UConn puts up a good fight. The whole time I've been surprised by them, though. So if they do end up winning, that would be pretty wild. But I see Florida they really seem like a complete team. So I see Florida winning this one by 7 to 10 points, something like that. What's your pick on it?
gotcha. I've gone against the Gators multiple times this tournament, and I've been burned multiple times. Um, I just can't stand the Florida Gators. I despise them. Um, and for some reason, I'm going to bet against the Gators yet again, and I will probably be burned. But I love the way UConn's playing right now. A couple of their young big guys are stepping up, and really able to protect the rim. So defensively, I mean, if you look at what they did, that Michigan State basketball team that just had seniors all over the place, they got under their skin. And in that second half, they just absolutely clamped down on the Spartans, and I think that their tremendous guard play again is something that Florida hasn't really seen this year. So I'm gonna go with the Huskies on this one. It's going to be a bit more of a high scoring affair.
Yeah, I
I think
completely agree. I
both
would have
teams are
loved to
good.
see this. If this could have been the championship game, I would have been excited for that.
Yeah, I was going to say we could definitely have quite the storyline with last team to beat Florida, giving it another shot. But it's gonna be a great game either way. I'm gonna say Huskies 71, Gators 68
Ooh,
in a
well, when I
close
was
one.
thinking high scoring, I was thinking like winning team's going to score 85 in this one.
Well, for
Maybe
these two
like
teams
that.
with how they play defense, that is high scoring. That being said, it wouldn't surprise me to see that game if early on they get into a situation where both teams are creating turnovers and you're getting easy buckets, it could easily get into that 80s number. But I know with just how both teams play so hard defensively, I gotta keep it somewhat reasonable in the scoring department. Um, but again, the key to the guard play of Wilbekin versus Napier, the quickness versus the toughness.
Yep. All right, so now we move on to the next matchup, which is Wisconsin, Kentucky. Both teams I'm really surprised to see here just because Wisconsin, I thought they would lose earlier. They should have lost their last game. Bryce will be the first one to tell you that was a BS foul call. Should have
Only a little.
should have been a no call. But come on. And then you've got Kentucky, who they end up in that region of death sort of scenario where just it was stacked
Absolutely.
and they tore through it. Not that it was easy for them to do, but it was they just ate it up. And unfortunately, I mean, I had Wichita State winning that region, and they beat Wichita State by just 2 points or 3 points, something like that. So
Yeah.
2 points, yeah, because
Well,
they went for the
yeah.
three and missed it. So it's unfortunate because I think Wichita State, if they win that game, they have the same success that Kentucky's having right now. It just happened to be Kentucky's day. So we've got
Yeah.
Kentucky, who's just strong. They're full of you know freshmen
Young,
that are
just raw talent.
they're great, and they played a very good-looking Michigan team that had just been lights out all tournament, and just they needed a three. They didn't need a three at the end, but they got a three to go up, and just boom, dagger. It was just pretty amazing matchup against Michigan, playing Wisconsin team, and like I said, shouldn't be in the game, so I don't really want them to win, but they're also playing lights out, so I'm not quite sure who to pick on this one. I mean, I might let Bryce talk about it first and to see if I can
You're gonna
figure it
defer.
out.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. I won't get too much into it, but I will say when after the game when Arizona coach Sean Miller was asked about the call, he said, um, "I don't want to comment. I've already paid one fine this tournament."
Yeah, that was a good quote. I saw that. It was perfect.
Basically saying, yeah, well, you know what I think. Don't ask me that question. But Frank the Tank, I mean, the big man for Wisconsin, just so versatile. I mean, you got a 7-footer that can get out and he can pick and pop and shoot the three. He can post up down low. If you look at what he was able to do to the Arizona defense, too quick for Caleb Tarzewski, the Wildcat 7-footer.
Yeah, yeah, that
Too
guy.
too
He
big, yeah, too
he
big
just
for an
reminds me of
airborne.
Nowitzki almost, just
A
being
little bit.
huge and can shoot anywhere.
Better post up game I think than Nowitzki had early on in his career. Nowitzki learned how to post up, a few years
Hmm.
into the league.
Yeah,
But that's a matchup where, and obviously, if ifs and buts were candied nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. But that's a matchup where if you have 6'11" Brandon Ashley, who is, lightning quick for his size, that's a matchup that is a defensive offensive matchup for the ages, and that's what that game is getting billed as. But then you have the other Wildcat pieces in Gordon and Tarzewski able to defend other positions, and that's obviously the difference between, we could be talking about a Wildcats in the Final Four or national title. But again, like I said, we could all be saying ifs and what ifs, but this happened and it shouldn't have, and blah 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 blah. So here and now, I have to go with, and it hurts a lot. I'm gonna have to go with Kentucky just because of the way they played the way they played towards the end of the season. I mean, they gave Florida one hell of a fight in the SEC title game. Honestly, I think for them, they've got that game in the back of their memory, thinking, hey, look, you won the SEC tournament, but we'll see in the NCAA final. And it would not surprise me to see an all-SEC national championship game. It would, make me quiver as much as I despise the SEC. Sorry, Mizzou fans. You're always going to be Big 12 to me. But I mean, I could see an SEC final. The only two good teams in that conference, and they're, arguably some of the best in the country. So,
well, to just defend the SEC for a moment, Tennessee played really well, and they had a chance against Michigan. So I would say there's at least
they did play
teams.
Mercer. They did get UMass.
That's not their
Mercer.
fault. That's Duke's fault.
I mean, yeah, they did beat who they were supposed to.
That's not,
You're
yeah.
right. They beat the teams that they should have beaten, which again, you can't get mad at them for that. That's not their fault.
But the thing is, the SEC, that they were looked down on going to this tournament, and now it's sort of interesting to see them showing up in the Final Four, two teams. So for some reason, my video, I'm not getting it. Are you getting it?
Yes.
All right. Well, that's good. Okay, there it is. Sometimes this Hangout technology is kind of goofy. Okay, well, so Kentucky, Wisconsin, man, it's just Wisconsin has shocked me throughout this tournament, and they just seem so on right now. They beat an Arizona team that I thought was, going to go, close to the championship game. I guess would at least be right here. I kind of don't want to see a rematch against Florida and Kentucky, so I'm just going to say I'm going to go with Wisconsin on this one, but I think it's a toss-up. Just because Florida versus Kentucky, it's happened 3 times, same outcome every time, so I don't want to see it, and so maybe that's influencing my vote or my viewpoint here, but so I'm hoping for Florida, Wisconsin. Bryce is saying possibly all SEC, but also UConn, Kentucky.
I'm calling UConn, Kentucky. I'm gonna go with my gut there.
All right, yeah. So that should be either one of those would be an interesting championship game. So let's talk Florida, Wisconsin, that possibility, and then we'll talk Kentucky, UConn. What do you see happening, Florida versus Wisconsin, in a championship game, if that happens?
I see a Wisconsin team that is tough and smart and can play really well, but only shot the ball 39% against a Wildcats defense that was quite frankly a little bit mismatched, and a Florida defense with 2 big strong guys down low that have the quickness to defend well around the basket. And quite frankly, with just the matchup the way that is, I see a 15-point Florida victory. I don't think Wisconsin just flat out can handle the athleticism and the pressure that Florida will throw at them. If you look at Wisconsin's performances against the Michigan States of the world and how they did within that conference, I mean, they played well. They had a lot of good games against the teams again that they're supposed to beat, but against the tougher teams in that conference, they up until a couple of good wins towards the end of the year, they struggled. So too much Gator power there, I think if that's the championship we see, it won't be too competitive of one.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it'll probably 15 points. Whew, I'd be down to see that because that's sort of like the spread that I have for my win-loss of the championship game for tiebreaker scenarios. If Wisconsin, if Florida guards the 3 well, then I think Wisconsin doesn't have a chance in it. If Wisconsin is able to, there's just a couple times in an Arizona game where it's like this guy who shoots threes is going to shoot a 3 if you leave him wide open, and they just, they played the defense. They played their defense. Arizona played their defense just the way they were sort of taught to do it, but they didn't adjust well, I don't think. So if Florida can adjust to little ball screens and pick and rolls, I think they'll handily win against Wisconsin as well. And I already said that I think they'd beat Kentucky anyway. If we wanted to talk about that possible matchup, but do you think the game would be that much different, Florida Kentucky matchup, if that happened?
I think if we saw a Florida Kentucky game, and maybe this is just me being crazy, but I think you've got a bit of a Georgetown Villanova feel like you did back in the birth of the Big East being the power back in the 80s with Ewing. And then, of course, that upstart Nova team that won the national title that year. I believe it was 1984 or 85.
Yes, back in the before I was born.
Might have been 80. I think it might have been 85. I was watching the Requiem for a Big East.
Okay, yeah. No, I haven't. I watched that when it first showed on ESPN, but
it is not easy to beat a team that you've seen that many times and not lose a single game to them throughout the year. It's just too tough. I mean, we've seen it. You see it. You see it in the NFL when you've got teams that are division rivals, and like for instance, Patriots go and beat two teams in the same, in their division, and then play in the playoffs. It's a different game.
That's very true with football, NCAA or NFL. That's very true. I mean, you saw it happen with LSU, Alabama. LSU just, defensively won the defensive field goal slugfest, and then all of a sudden they play in the SEC championship game. They just can't do it. Alabama was, they saw them once and they were able to figure it out.
If you remember, we had the national title game that was the year that LSU Bama. LSU I think won 9-6.
Oh yeah, I guess it wasn't the SEC championship. It was the national championship game.
Yeah, they played in the national championship game. You saw a 9-6 game. One of the now, and this is depends on what part of the country you're in. If you're anywhere in the 25% of the country that's down like this way, it was a great defensive battle between two well-coached and executed teams. If you were anywhere else in the country, it was a boring snooze fest with two offenses that didn't look like they knew what the heck they were doing.
Yeah, but then Alabama was able to, even though they lost that first matchup, they sneak into the freaking
blew them away.
Game,
so again,
I hate that. I like you gotta win. At least I think you should win your. NCAA football is a whole different thing, but I think you should at least win your conference if you're going to be up there.
Well, we got the +1 coming up soon, so.
Yeah.
But the point is it is again, especially in college basketball, when you're seeing a team that many times and you've beaten them, every dog has his day, and there's going to come a time, especially because Kentucky's going to walk into that game with wanting blood. Right, they've beaten you 2-3 times during the regular season and then conference tournament. So before you get to this point, they know everything Florida's going to throw at them, and they're playing with a chip on their shoulder right now.
Yeah, it would be interesting.
I think if we see a Kentucky-Florida, I've got Calipari's Wildcats winning it if we see that kind of a final.
All right. And so then on to the possible UConn-Kentucky matchup, which I think would be very interesting. I would say if UConn can show up and beat Florida, then I think they show up and beat Calipari's squad just because they're more, while they do have some young, interesting players, they've got a little bit more depth, and they've been through some ups and downs, and they've made it, they found their groove. I think UConn wins that matchup. And then I'll just say if it's UConn versus Wisconsin, I think UConn would also win that just because of the balance and because with Wisconsin. I think if you can take away that 3 ball, then they're just not quite as good. So, so what's your view on the UConn-Kentucky matchup?
Well, I've got an interesting stat that I saw earlier that I want to throw out at you, and as I find it here. I mean, it's something that is pretty ridiculous. But if we see that UConn-Kentucky final again, historically Calipari coached teams down the stretch and in the pressure moments do not shoot the ball well from the free throw line. I want to look at the fact that UConn, in the second half of that basketball game against Michigan State, I believe it was 19 of 19 from the free throw line.
Oh, wow.
They scored 39 points in that second half. They were down 25-21 at halftime. Final score 60-54. So they scored 39 points in the second half, 19 of them from the free throw line where they were perfect in the second half.
Yeah, and that was the thing with Kentucky's win against Wichita State. All of a sudden, a Kentucky team that shoots in the 70s from the free throw line.
Or worse
second half, they were, but they were just lights out. They're guys that shot, 67% from the field, were 4 out of 4 sort of thing. So if Kentucky gets in that situation where it's a close game against UConn, which I think it would be, and they don't have one of these lucky games of the year when it comes from the free throw line, which is laughable to talk about because it's a free shot, then yeah, I think what you're talking about comes into play heavily, and that would definitely influence the game towards UConn's favor, just because they, fundamentals. It's all about the fundamentals.
Yeah, putting the fun in fundamentals, and as silly as it sounds, I mean if you look at the two teams that just seem to be having the best time out on the floor, it's UConn and Kentucky right now. So that being said, again, the free throws, the senior play, Shabazz Napier, been there, done that mentality. I mean, he's didn't have a great first half, and he put the team on his back in the second, and did what he had to get the W.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you see, you mentioned briefly the possibility of a Wisconsin versus UConn final. Again, I've got UConn. Just something about this team is just looks so much like Kemba Walker. Plus, if you look at the fact, that they had 3 players that stayed, even though last year they were ineligible for NCAA postseason play because of the sanctions from Coach Calhoun. Obviously now they've moved on to a different head coach, but their first time, allowed to be back in the tournament. Again, you want to talk about kids playing with a chip on their shoulder. Here you go.
Yeah, they're ready to do something. All right, so on the next episode, because right now we've got basically either Florida, in my opinion, or your opinion, UConn winning.
I got UConn.
All right. Yeah, so that's something interesting. Now, Bryce and I, we had a beer bet between ourselves, and we'll after the championship we'll count up the points. Bryce never got his actual
I'm old school.
His picks on ESPN. So
I'm old school.
We'll have to add up his scores for that. And currently, a couple of guys that did join our thing, I'm tied for first with another friend of ours. And basically, it comes down to if there's a big point spread or a tight point spread in the Florida game. I need a big Florida win. I need a high-scoring Florida win.
I for the first time in my life of brackets, for the first time ever, I don't have a single one of my Final Four picks in the Final Four.
That's rough. That's how I normally feel. This year I've got one.
I've always had at least 2. I've never had all 4, but I've always either had 2 or 3. And this year I do not have a single one of my Final Four picks left in the tournament. I had Ohio State, Arizona, Michigan State, and Louisville. Only one of those 4 teams were even playing to get into said, or no, actually 2, Arizona. But no bueno.
It is what it is sometimes.
I lost, so I will definitely be owing someone something.
Probably so, yeah. Hopefully, if I can win the bracket challenge with some of our guys, then won't have to buy anyone else beer.
I was gonna say, then I'll just owe you, and we're good.
Yeah, it'll be all square. All right. Well, thanks for joining once again. I have been Dode, and I'm here with Bryce. Yeah, and so we will see you next week. We'll try and we've got another friend who might be interested in doing some stuff, or we might split into 2 different one sports thing and one maybe just culture or something. We'll see what happens. It's crazy. The power of the Google Plus bringing us all together. All right. Well, cheers, everyone. Good luck with your picks that you have left, and
Here, here.
we'll see you around the bend.